Hi everyone, my name's Simon Foster, Festival Director of the Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival. Robert Stone is one of this planet's great documentarians with Oscar and Emmy and WGA nominations and a vast list of festival awards to his name. His latest film is STARMAN, a wonderfully thoughtful and entertaining piece on the legendary NASA robotics engineer and best-selling science fiction author Gentry Lee. It is the opening night of my 2025 Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival, and I am honoured to have a few moments with Robert Stone. Nice to meet you, sir.
Thank you for having me. I wish I could make it all the way to Sydney for the festival, but it's a long way.
It is a long, long way. That's true. We haven't quite mastered those distances in the world of science fiction yet. So well, in
You
science
will.
fiction we have, but yes, not in the real
Yeah.
world. Um, Big picture first, Robert. How
Mhm.
would you define your perspective on your relationship with the great unknown, with space?
Oh, that's a big question. I was born in 1958, okay? So I was 10 years old when they landed on the moon. Um, and uh I was no, was I 10 or was I yeah, I was 10. So I was 9 years old when my parents took me to see 2001. I think that was like October 1968. And it totally blew my mind.
I bet it did for a 9-year-old.
Oh, no, I was right in the sweet spot, right? For like these things having a huge impression on your life. And I remember my mom was a bit of a film freak. And I was so blown away by this movie. And I kept talking to her because all I'd seen before for movies, I'd gone to see like A Hard Day's Night and The Sound of Music and, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, right? But here was a movie that was really about something like that was really profound. And, this was the 1960s. We're all growing up with it. They were shooting rockets. We all knew we were going to the moon.
Sure.
We had this idea that Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke really expressed that there was going to be this future was going to just keep going and going and going. So this
Yeah.
is where we were. And then so my mom told me about Stanley Kubrick, and that's the first time it like clicked. Oh, like there's a director and they make move. I never thought about people actually making movies. You just went to the movie, right? Didn't
Sure.
think about it. So that was kind of planted in my mind. And then like 6 weeks, 2 months later, the first trip around the moon, Apollo 8,
Oh my
right?
gosh, it's the perfect
Christmas
storm for you,
1968.
isn't it? Yeah.
And then 9 months after that, the first moon landing happens, right? And so all of these things are in my mind. And I started making Super 8 movies with my friends.
Sure.
I was really into this. So, all that really stuck with me. And space just became, I don't know, I've always been fascinated with it. Delving back into it reminds me of my childhood. It's a kind of comfort place. And it's sort of my religion. I'm not a religious person. I wasn't brought up with any kind of religion about, how the world works or the universe works. So I'm interested in astrophysics and, all the things we've discovered in the course of my lifetime that's completely altered the way that we understand our place in the universe. All that fascinates me.
So all these years later, when Owen Gleberman in his Variety review writes, Robert Stone is in touch with the primal power of space to stoke our dreams, that suggests you've maintained that sense of awe, that sense of fascination, and transplanted it to the world of cinema over all these decades.
Well, I think, and Gentry certainly has. Gentry really just has a childlike fascination with space that's captivating. And I think for me, um, my mission in making the film was to reignite that sense of wonder that I remember having as a kid, that I think has been lost for a lot of young people today.
Mhm.
I think, when the space shuttle came along, the whole NASA, just wanted to make space normal and it made space boring.
God.
And then, uh, there's been a lot of movies about astronauts. We're trying to go back to the moon now. Everybody wants to like recreate the whole Apollo experience all over again.
Sure.
But that sense of awe, that sense of wonder, that sense of, looking up at the night sky as a kid. I wanted to to capture that in a movie, and science fiction is, right now, I suppose, if you think about it, when I was a kid, science fact was science fiction. It was like
Sure.
we were going headlong into a science fiction world, and science fiction was just barely keeping pace with reality. Now science fiction is like way ahead, and so that, I think, science fiction is where we go to find that sense of awe and wonder now.
Let's talk about Gentry Lee. Do you recall that moment when his work and his legacy came into a sharp focus for you? That moment when you thought, yeah, he's going to be my next film.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I was brought out to JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, California, where Gentry works, with the idea that, just to explore an idea about possibly making a movie about the exploration of the solar system. Um, I was very skeptical about doing that because there's no humans involved. There's no astronauts. There's no vicarious person to take you on this journey. And movies are about people, not things. Um, and I didn't want to do sort of a run-of-the-mill sort of science documentary that you might see on Discovery Channel or something. That wasn't of interest to me. And the subject has been covered a lot. But then I met Gentry, and he and we just immediately hit it off. Like, here was a guy, I'd never heard of him. And here was a guy who was a living extension of Carl Sagan and Arthur C. Clarke. My connection to 2001 is right before my eyes. And I'd never met anybody who was a scientist and an engineer who was so fascinated with science fiction.
Yeah.
Like, he put it all together. It was all of it. To me, to him, and to me, space inhabits a whole spectrum of human thought, from the actual going out into space with the robotic missions, looking into space with these incredible telescopes we have now, like the James Webb Telescope and the Hubble and things like that. The fascination that people have with UFOs. Well, the aliens are already here. They're all walking around and
Sure.
sitting in underground bases in New Mexico or something. That's all part of it. And then science fiction, of course, right? So all of this is a spectrum of thought about, you could get into quantum mechanics and all this other stuff too. It's all, and I'd never met anybody who could put all this together in one thing. But it was daunting. It's like, well, how do I package this into a 90-minute film?
And
That was a challenge.
you've done it wonderfully. I've got to say, his sense of yearning, his drive to discover life in whatever form, in outer space is so cinematically engaging. He makes such a great central figure in the film. In a broader terms, why does the ongoing quest to seek out life beyond our planet remain relevant?
Well, it's the ultimate question, I think. I mean, once you get beyond the idea of, there being a benevolent God floating in the clouds, kind of watching over us, if you dispense with that idea as a literal reality, then the question, are we alone, looms pretty large, and a large, if you have the time and space to sit around and contemplate such things. That's a pretty profound thing to consider. And what I love about what Gentry does in explaining his passion for this is it really, in the big picture, it gives humanity a sense of purpose, beyond just, accumulating wealth and in your life. And I think a lot of people today do lack a sense of purpose, a sense of purpose of humanity. People are very depressed about climate change. They think human beings are a blight on the planet, and if we all just, there's a Malthusian idea, we all just melted away, the world would be a better place. Gentry's done the opposite of that. I am too. And Carl Sagan says it in that little clip from Cosmos we show, where he says, "We are the way for the cosmos to know itself." That's a kind of a profound thought, because we figured this stuff out. Is there any other life form out there that actually knows that there is a cosmos, that even knows is aware of its existence? Or maybe we're the only ones. These are interesting questions.
There are two key aspects to Starman that I loved, and why I programmed it as part of the festival. I want to touch on both of them with you. One is that it's, and you've touched on this in your answers already so far, it's very respectful, even enraptured by quote unquote science fiction as much as it is science. It, what are the speculative works that you admire most?
Well, obviously, I'm a child of 2001.
2001, yeah.
That was very formative for me. And that was another thing I bonded with Gentry over is what he talks about as plausible science fiction.
Mm.
Science fiction that obeys the laws of physics to a degree, or at least, yeah, what he says is not science fiction that's not implausible. Like I was never enamored with the Star Wars, for instance.
Sure.
You know, that seemed like a throwback to the kind of science fiction my parents might have seen, you know, Buck Rogers and stuff.
Yep.
But movies like Arrival, I love the series For All Mankind that was recently on, Three Body Problem. I mean, there's a whole string of them. Any science fiction that's speculative, that that in, imagines a future that could have happened or could happen, or some in some way is inhabits some level of reality.
Sure.
Really strikes me as interesting because it's to me that becomes an extension of actual exploration. Once you get to the limits of what we can actually explore, which is pretty limited, you know, the next step is, well, where is your imagination go? We're probably not going to be encountering any alien species because of the things about time and space, which we explain in the film.
Mm.
But we can speculate and we can imagine, and that's a wonderful thing to do. That's part of it. That's part of exploration to me.
The other aspect of the film that I love is that Starman is a profoundly human story, and more precisely, one human story in general. He's a scientist, but also a father and a grandfather and a baseball fan. And your film acknowledges his legend, but it also celebrates his beautifully ordinary qualities as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, movies are about people,
Yeah.
and that was the challenge, you know, to begin with. Like, if you're going to make a film about space exploration, in an environment in which no humans have ever gone beyond the moon, right? Um, you need to find a human way of telling that story, and there's very few people. Oh, there really is nobody like Gentry. And I knew when I met him, you could never put Gentry in a movie with anybody else. You know, you couldn't go and like interview like 10 scientists and have Gentry be one of them. It wouldn't work, right? You know,
Yes, he
he's
does
too
draw
good.
focus that way, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah. No, he's just as a human being, he's in a league all of his own. I mean, I've been making films for 40 years. I've met a lot of really interesting people as one does making documentaries. I've never met anybody like Gentry.
Yeah.
He's the most fascinating person. And to be able to spend time with him and get to know him and go traveling around with a movie with him has been just an incredible joy to me.
Well, let me ask you about your many years making movies, and I find Starman is a bit of a companion piece to a couple of your past works. Obviously, the landmark documentary series Chasing the Moon, of course, but also, and perhaps more so, your 1991 film Farewell Good Brothers, the story of the first wave of alien contactees. In that film, a contactee says there is a beautiful harmony between space and science and religion. Now, how does that 35-year-old comment, I think, sit with you today? And I guess with regards to Starman.
Well, you're probably one of about the 6 people who've seen that film.
Oh, I've seen it. Don't worry.
Yeah, you're taking me back a bit. No, well, it shows you I have been fascinated with this for a long time. I mean, the Farewell Good Brothers really was about religion and about belief. And um, that for me, a lot of people might get upset with me for saying this, but I think the belief in that alien creatures are here, um, or have been here and have had contact with human beings is kind of it's a theological idea, um, that is related to science fiction. It's a theological idea that's very in tune with the scientific world and technological world that we live in today. And that the point of that movie was to show. I went and interviewed many of the people who first came up with the whole cosmology of alien contact, and it is a kind of a cosmology. And they were very clear about why they were doing it. It's the middle of the Cold War. They wanted to create a unified global belief system, um, uh, which we see played out in The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is at the end of Starman too. You know, the Day the Earth Stood Still was a magnificent Hollywood rendition of the stories that these early contactees, that's what they called themselves, and then late 40s and 1950s, their stories. So all of this gets mixed in together. It's all one spectrum of thought. And that's what I wanted to make a film about.
I guess finally, and while we're upsetting people, let's do it again. America is reshaping itself at present, and terms like visionary scientist and speculative thinker are being tarnished a bit, often, clearly for political gain. From where does the next Gentry Lee emerge? Where will their voice be heard? Will it be American?
Probably be Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very depressing. I hope this is just a spasm of insanity that passes. But I mean, you can't justify what's going on under any rational, even if you're, totally into having an authoritarian government. Well, I'm sorry, the Soviet Union was an authoritarian government, and they still pursued science and engineering and exploration. And the Chinese is they're an authoritarian country. They're not doing this kind of thing. They're pushing forward with science and technology and the acquisition of knowledge, which I think is a basic human desire. So this is just stupid. This is just an embrace of stupidity that I hope comes to an end. But it's very sad because JPL is laying off half of their people. Most of the space missions are being canceled. And we're trying to recreate 1969 all over again at vast expense. And I don't think anybody's going to care.
I hope your film, I'm almost certain your film will be at the forefront of that kind of social thinking, changing direction. I hope your film is seen by enough people to realize how important people like Gentry Lee and like you are in telling the real story, a better story.
That's our hope, and we're going to go on tour with it all over the country and around the world and spread that message. It's something Gentry's really passionate about.
Starman opens the Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival on October 3, and then goes into release in the US, I think early next year, doesn't it, Robert?
February 6th, we open in New York and LA. Yeah.
Wonderful. All the very best, mate. Thank you so much, Robert Stone, for joining us, for your body of work for Starman. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, and an honor to have you as part of our lineup this year.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, mate.